Gen Z is projected to control $12 trillion by 2030. And let's be clear, they don't want vague promises about sustainability. They want real action, tangible solutions, and transparency. Now, what if I were to tell you that some of the answers that we're looking for here on Earth are actually already orbiting 250 miles above us? And that is why we are here to introduce you to FEAST, Future Earth Awareness and Space Technologies, a certification inspired by space innovation designed to help build a more sustainable future. Now I get the pleasure of introducing Galactic Solutions, a group of industry leaders and future thinkers. We have Frank Burgos with Food for Less, Brunella Gibson with King Soopers and City Market, Brandon Lacoste with Albertsons Companies, Ashley Evans from PepsiCo, and myself, Dan Sturwalt from Stater Brothers Markets, and we are on a mission to help you build a more sustainable future and to win the next generation of consumers. Today isn't just about sharing information. It's about driving immediate action across your supply chain. By implementing these technologies through FEAST certification, manufacturers and retailers like you can lead the transition to a more sustainable supply chain, meet evolving consumer demand, especially with Gen Z, reduce your environmental footprint, and lastly, ensure long-term growth in an increasingly values-driven market. Now, when we first started this process, we asked ourselves an important question. How will we eat in the future? Not just here on Earth, but even possibly on Mars. And our goals, they quickly became clear: to harness space technologies to better conserve Earth's finite resources and to help you position your brands to win the consumer of tomorrow. So now, let me walk you through what we'll talk about today. The current challenges facing the food industry and Earth's limited resources. How space technology can help conserve those resources. And lastly, how FEAST certification can help you adopt these innovations so you can win the hearts, the minds, and the wallets of the Gen Z consumer.
Everyone in this industry plays a significant role, one that goes far beyond supply chain and store shelves. We feed the world. Each day, we help nourish billions of families across the globe. But for many of us, this is more than just a job. We decided to be part of this industry because we believe in its power to strengthen communities, improve life, and transform our future. But despite all the progress and promise, there's a reality we must face. Have we stopped to truly think about the resources that make all of this possible? And more importantly, what happens if those resources become extinct? What happens to our purpose, our promise, and the communities we serve if we ignore the warning signs around us? Let's begin with one of the most urgent and overlooked resources: water. Over 4 billion people live in regions experiencing water stress. Agriculture, the backbone of our business, consumes nearly 70% of the world's freshwater supply. This is not just a statistic, it's a red flag. And without immediate action, water scarcity could become the greatest threat to our food systems and to global stability. Next, we have food waste, a crisis hiding in plain sight. Each year, we lose approximately $40 trillion worth of food in the US. Shockingly, $24 trillion of that come directly from grocery stores and restaurants. Those are not just wasted meals. They're wasted water, labor, energy, and opportunity. And yet, that level of waste could potentially feed up to 600 million people every year. Imagine the impact if we could reduce waste across our entire supply chain, from farm to table. And lastly, we have packaging, a necessity in modern food distribution, but one that it's also becoming a sustainability crisis of its own. While it is essential for the protection of our food, excessive packaging, especially plastic, is polluting our landfills and oceans at a dangerous rate. Consumers see it, they care, and they're demanding for more eco-friendly alternatives, and this demand is only accelerating. This moment calls for something more than reactive change. It calls for courageous leadership. We need to reimagine how we operate, how we innovate, but more importantly, how we collaborate across the industry. Because our mission has just never been about food. It's always been about people. And the foundation we want to build for them depend on the choices that we make today. Before we continue, we would like to show you a video, one that will challenge us to think differently about how we operate, but about the future we have the power to shape together.
We will run out of energy on Earth.
Humans have always used about 100 watts of power. That's our natural metabolic rate.
But in our developed technological society, we use over 10,000 watts of power per person.
There are so many good things that happen when we use energy.
Think about technology, transportation.
But humans are doubling our energy use every 25 years, and that's unsustainable. Today, you could cover all of humanity's energy needs by covering the state of Nevada in solar cells. But at that rate of growth, in 200 years, you'd have to cover the entire planet in solar cells.
We are gaining efficiency, and yet, when we gain more efficiency, what do?
We use more energy.
There has to be another way.
There is another way. Space.
You may have noticed almost every day on the news, there's something related to space. Space travel, space tourism, going back to the moon, and even civilization on Mars. And there have been 1,000 rocket launches in the last 5 years. These companies are looking for civilization in space and Mars and the moon. During this exploration, they've been finding new technologies and ideas to help with living in limited resource environments. What we found out as a team is these same techniques used in space can also be used here on Earth to help with sustainability, cost, and shelf life. That's why we created FEAST, Future Earth Awareness and Space Technologies. This is a certification process to highlight companies that are using more sustainable techniques for their products. Astronauts rely on certain things in space, and one of them is water, and there's very little bit of it in space. So they rely on things like hydroponics. This process to grow plants uses no soil and about 90% less water than traditional farming. There's also aeroponics, which is really similar, uses even less water, and can be done in very limited space. Perfect for the spacecraft, but even better for dense urban populations like we're in now. When it comes to protein, astronauts are not herding cattle in orbit. They're actually relying on different things like cultured meat. This lab-grown process uses about 45% less energy and 96% less water than traditional cattle farming. There's also something similar called air protein, which takes carbon dioxide from the air and makes protein cultures from it. It's a full ecosystem that astronauts are using today. Then there's freeze-dried foods, which this significantly extends shelf life and doesn't require any refrigeration, which is perfect for helping reduce food waste. There's also packaging being used in space that helps with durability and functionality, but could be used here on Earth
to help with quality and shelf life. For example, cheese that may have about 2-week shelf life can be extended to 8 months with vacuum sealed packaging. And then vegetables that may have 8 months can be extended to 3 years. This isn't rocket science, or is it? Feed certification is a process that ensures that we'll have more sustainable products in our future food industry and for our future consumers. Now that you've heard more about these space technologies that could help finite resources on Earth, we're now going to switch it over and talk about how you can capitalize on these advancements for the future of the food industry.
Today's consumers is not only shopping, they're making a statement with every purchase. Today's values are driving buying decisions. Sustainability is no longer a niche concern, it's a mainstream demand. In fact, 60% of consumers say they're willing to pay more for sustainably made products. And 78% say sustainability influences where they shop. Even further, the Gen Z generation is taking it a step further. 88% say that they're willing to buy from brands that make sustainability claims clear. This is important because the Gen Z generation will be the largest consumer with $12 trillion by 2030. They're not just spending, they're influencing. So we have just a thing, feast. Here are some brands or some items from our companies with the Feast certified logo. Hopefully they meet that certification process of innovation, sustainability, and resource conservation. On that note, these items are a bridge to an innovation of responsibility and commitment. So how do we put it into play in the real world? We create feast destinations for feast certified products, just like we do with organic lines today and non-GMOs. Feast is the next evolution of certified products. These products will meet water conservation, farming practices, sustainable farming practices, and also meet the rigorous standards of conservation. In fact, on these items, this is not only feast is not a label, it's a badge. It's a badge a commitment to save our planet of our finite resources. Thank you. Now we're here, our cost implementation in our real world.
Now that you have a deeper understanding of Earth's resource scarcity, specifically around water conservation, food waste, and packaging, it's clear that we have an opportunity to leverage the technologies being used in space today in order to build a more sustainable supply chain down on Earth and meet the needs of our consumers of the future. When it comes to the investment behind this, our research shows that it costs approximately $30,000 per acre to convert a farm from traditional farming practices into hydroponics and aeroponics. And there are currently state and federal grants that would help farmers with this heavy investment, which is where we're experiencing about a $2 million investment to convert a 100-acre farm. $3 million investment for a 100-acre farm. When it comes to cultured meat, the investment is really around technology. We know that cultured meat is still a fairly new phenomenon. This is where the investment would come in to help reduce the cost. Currently, cultured meat costs 5 times more than your traditional cattle beef. However, we believe with the $2 million investment, we would be able to get this closer to 2 times more expensive than your traditional cattle beef. And when it comes to packaging, we know the suppliers and manufacturers in the room have already made significant investments to build a more sustainable packaging, which is why we're expecting approximately a $750,000 investment to ensure that we're 100% sustainable. This would assume a return on investment of $5.25 million within the first 5 years of FEAST certification. However, the cost of inaction will be detrimental. If we don't implement these solutions today, we will continue to deplete Earth's resources at an unsustainable rate, leading to greater water shortages, increase in food insecurity, and an overall destruction of our environment and resources as we know them today, which is why the need to act is now. Which leads us to our short-term and long-term goals for FEAST certification. In the short term, by 2030, we want to see 10% of the space in retail stores being allocated to cultured meat. We know that today there's consumer skepticism and lack of trust around cultured meat, which is where we would rely heavily on the suppliers and manufacturers to build educational campaigns to build that trust with our consumers. However, the retailers in the room know trial begins within our four walls, which is why it's imperative for us to get this product in front of our consumer. When it comes to produce, we want to see 20% of the produce that we source in our stores coming from farms that are supporting hydroponic and aeroponic practices. And in addition to that, we want to see 100% of our packaging to be fully sustainable. That means recyclable, compostable, or biodegradable. We believe that these efforts alone would cut our food waste by 15% or $3.6 trillion. In the long term, by 2050, we want to see that space allocated for cultured meat to increase from 10% to 50%. We want to see 75% of our produce being sourced from hydroponics and aeroponics, and again, remaining 100% sustainable with our packaging. We believe that these efforts could cut our food waste in half, or $12 trillion of savings to our bottom line. As an industry, the decisions that we make today will leave a lasting impact on the future of our organizations. And we have an opportunity to capture the $12 trillion of buying power that Gen Z will have by 2030 who are demanding these type of products. So I ask you this, as industry leaders, what legacy will you leave behind? Will we continue to let short-term convenience outweigh long-term responsibility? Or will the manufacturers in the room stand up today and pledge to make the investments necessary to bring FEAST certified products to their retailers? And retailers, will you partner with suppliers who are pushing these products and allowing us both to work together to build a more sustainable food supply chain and capture the needs of our future consumer? The future is in our hands. Thank you for your time, and we'll now open the floor up for any questions.
Question there.
Oh, I think they're getting a mic, it looks like.
Can you hear me? Oh, there it is.
Oh, yes, we can.
Great presentation, everyone. So you talked a lot about the connection between the depletion of resources and space, and sort of leveraging kind of the technology that bridges that gap. Was there anything you discovered in your research that has to do with actually extracting resources from space to fill gaps here that we have here on Earth?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to speak to that. Good question. There's actually a company nearby in LA that's called Varda, and they're actually doing something where they're actually making medications in space due to its limited gravity, and they're bringing it back down, and it's like all mechanical and does it by itself. There's no humans that are actually doing it. So there's actually things that are being done in space that are being brought back down by companies today. So great question. Thank you. I think we had a question over here.
Yeah,
too.
the mic.
there it is. Great job, you guys. This is fascinating. My question comes from more of a regulation perspective, and I'm curious, since it is in space, who oversees the standards and regulations, and how does that get regulated from a global perspective?
Yeah, so currently NASA is in charge of all of the food processing for the astronauts in space today. For feast certification, we would partner with the FDA to make sure that we're meeting the rigorous standards to put our feast certified logo on these products.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Great presentation. So the question is for this to catch on sooner than later, are there any companies already doing this? And if you want this to catch on to the Gen Zs, how are you going to put it out there sooner so it can be attractive, so it will become the norm?
Yeah, so currently there are companies that are doing freeze drying. You can find those products at REI today. So Mountain House and Astronaut are two examples of companies that are doing freeze dried foods today that we haven't had the opportunity to bring into our stores. In addition to that, some retailers in the room are already partnering with producers that are supporting hydroponic practices. There are some vertical farms in California. Taylor Farms has actually started converting a portion of their farm into hydroponics. So to answer your question, it's going to be around an educational campaign of Feast to ensure that we are capturing that consumer and letting them know of the rigorous standards that are being put in place that do help support the resources here on Earth. Team, do you have anything else to add?
I would add something too. We do have a website as well that you can learn about all the different things we talked about, and companies are actually doing a lot of this stuff right now. So if you scan the QR code, it'll take you to our website.
Great job. What is the shelf life of the cultured meat?
I want to say it was actually longer than actual beef and chicken, but we'll have to look into that. We can get back to you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.